self-care is this sacred work of caring for the temple of the Most High. Like if we are the temple of the Lord, if we are a place of worship, then caring for that temple, body, soul, spirit, caring for that place that the Lord has said He wants to rest in is so important. It's vitally important, and it's so. It to me, I see self-care as a form of that worship.
Holy Wild Birth is a podcast embracing the reclamation of giving birth, rooted in God's original design, undisturbed.
Here, we share homebirth stories highlighting God's presence as the great midwife, as well as conversations about all aspects of a holistic, spirit-led childbearing year. From the perspectives of myself, traditional midwife Lauren Hall of Rooted in Eden Private Contract Association,
and me, holistic doula and birthkeeper Brooke Collier of Sister Birth.
To choose a holy wild birth journey is to consecrate all your decisions unto the Lord.
And to reclaim creation unadulterated by centuries of human attempts to control and improve upon what God has already called good.
Please remember, birth is not a medical event, but a natural process. We are not your care providers, and this should not be taken as medical advice.
Hi, sisters. Welcome to season 2 of a Holy Wild Birth podcast. We're so glad to be back here after a break over the Christmas season and into the new year. We're excited to bring more, hopefully fresh content to you this time around. We thank you so much for the reviews and ratings that you left for us last season. That really helps so much. And if you have it in your heart and have a minute today to do that for us, we would really appreciate it. So today's episode is about self-care, and it's kind of like a cliche phrase at this point, but you know me and Lauren, we're going to come at it from a slightly different angle and hopefully bring kind of a fresh perspective on it through a gospel lens. And I think you will find it to be full of both practical and high-level theoretical thoughts. So jump right in, grab a cup of coffee. It's kind of a long one, but we hope you get a lot of goodness out of it. Hey, friend.
Hello.
Season 2.
Oh my goodness, I cannot believe we are at season 2. We recorded a whole season of podcasts, Brooke. The whole season.
I know. And from what I understand, the rate of drop off for new podcasts is actually pretty high. So I feel like we can pat ourselves on the back a little bit for making it through one whole season.
Right. And it's still growing. Just really humbled and prayerful that it's glorifying the Lord, and very excited to be a part of it. So
me too. And we're going to jump in the new year talking about a topic that I feel like comes up for a lot of people in a new year, which is, we're all trying to kind of enter the year with new resolve to do certain things better. And one of those things is taking care of ourselves.
Yes.
And that ever popular catchphrase, self-care.
Self-care.
Which we have some thoughts about. And we would like to kind of maybe apply those specifically to those who we know listen to this podcast, which would be primarily moms and birth workers. So I'm excited to dig into that topic. And you and I were joking before we hit record that even taking the season break was a form of self-care, because it wasn't necessarily premeditated. It was it was like you and me talking and saying this is feeling hard right now. This is complicated. And I just had a baby and you were in transition and going through some stuff. And
we had just gone through some major grief, and we both had really big things happening in our lives. And it was this doesn't, we had this premeditated, self-appointed goal of releasing one weekly, and wanted to honor that. But then we're like, hey, you know what? Podcast seasons are a thing.
Yes.
So,
and there was an acknowledgement that we don't have to enslave ourselves to our own standards of how often we need to drop a podcast episode.
Yes.
Which is such a good self-care lesson in general, because I think how often I do that in other areas of my life too, where I have this idea in my head of a certain like level of performance I should be achieving. And when I'm not, I beat myself up about it, or I drive myself too hard. I'm like, wait, nobody asked me to do that except me. Like, it wasn't like God was like, Brooke, thou shalt serve a fancy Friday night dinner every week, henceforth and forevermore. Like,
I
no,
love
that
that
was just
he
me.
speaks in Old English there.
Like, you know.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, we don't have to be enslaved to the standards we set for ourselves unless it's a standard God set for us.
Right.
And so
Exactly. And he
yeah,
asked us to set the he asked us to do the podcast, but he did not say do it weekly every Tuesday.
yep,
So,
yep. So we hope during the break you all got a chance to catch up on many episodes that you might have been behind on, or that you just had good time with your families, because it was also Christmas and
also the holidays, which was a big part of that too, right? We had the holidays happening and the new year and the transitions and all the things. So I I don't know. I guess to transition a little bit here, I think about when I first think about self-care, and I think the first thing that comes up, like almost inevitably, especially on a Christian platform, the first question is always like, is self-care biblical? Is this a selfish practice? Like it's self-worship. And really, it's a valid concern. And I really have kind of an overarching, I guess, thesis, if you will, that self-care is this sacred work of caring for the temple of the Most High. Like if we are the temple of the Lord, if we are a place of worship, then caring for that temple, body, soul, spirit, caring for that place that the Lord has said He wants to rest in, is so important. It's vitally important, and it's so. It to me, I see self care as a form of that worship as Christians, engaging in biblical self care and recognizing Him, and spending time with Him. Like that is the ultimate form of self care, and needs to be at the forefront.
that's so well said.
And I think that I talk a lot about actually in various times in history, the secular world has kind of latched onto things that are principles of the kingdom, and they kind of try and take ownership of it. They see that it's truth and they kind of latch onto it, but then it gets twisted around because they've removed God from it. And so I feel like self-care is one of those things, and to, kind of as an example, we see it with like giving, right? We know that even the secular world knows that they will reap what they sow, right? They know that if they give, they get back. And some people call it karma, but even like financial gurus will talk about giving to charities that outside of this understanding of sowing into the kingdom, or things like positive thinking. Like we know that what we set our mind upon and what we renew our mind makes a massive difference in our life, or forgiveness frees us, right? The secular world knows those things too, and that doesn't make them not biblical, obviously. And I feel like self-care falls into this category. So the world has turned the temple, the self, we are the temple of the living God. And so this is a sacred work, caring for the temple of the Most High. So the world has turned that temple into an idol. Instead of the temple being a place we worship, it's like, I am the worship, you worship me in my self-care. And so this secular worldview puts self as the source of inner healing, right? Like, and that's kind of where, if you go down enough self-care books and gurus and, courses and all the things, it's, you do this to gain inner healing, right? And we know that inner healing only comes from the Lord. And so that part is the falsehood. But that falsehood doesn't negate biblical self-care, that, that the source of inner healing is ourselves, is the falsehood. The source of inner healing is Yeshua, is Jesus, right? Is his work in our lives. But the fact that a falsehood exists in the world does not negate biblical self-care when we're maintaining the true source. So we can recognize our healing comes from him alone, and then applying his principles that are absolutely in the word as our only avenue to healing. That, this biggest proponent of self-care ends up boiling down to the Christian as time with him. That is why self-care is a form of worship. Caring for your body, caring for your soul, caring for your spirit, honoring his design, the physiological design of your body and how he works and this design in the world, living as designed. That honoring is honoring the temple that you are, that he is inhabiting. So that is where I come at in differentiating this like indulgent, selfish, self-focused, quote unquote, self-care versus I'm trying to honor with my body, with my life, the Lord that is asked to reside, and he wants us to be a resting place for him, right? He called us to be his temple where he lives and abides. So of course we should be taking care of his temple. To not take care of an actual temple and destroy it and leave it messy and ruined is not, would be noticed as a lack of worship, right? So that is what I put forth as it being
good.
very, very biblical.
Yeah, it's like we're the temple and the temple keeper all at the same time.
Exactly.
Whereas in like the Old Testament, when the people were going to a physical temple to worship, there was temple keepers. But now in the new covenant, we are both the temple and the temple keepers.
Yeah.
And
right.
Yeah, you're right. There's two ditches with this, isn't there? Because I think you could see some Christians who really neglect their temple keeping role.
Yeah.
Severely because of this, like, well, I'm going to be given a new body someday in heaven, so this one doesn't matter almost. Like, just this real dismissiveness of the temporary vessel that we're in.
Right.
And then the other ditch is like that kind of like more worship of the temple instead of the one who dwells in it.
Yes, exactly. And so we have to, and I think that sometimes that first ditch you mentioned, it's this almost pointing the fingers at the other ditch, right? They're like, you shouldn't do that because it's selfish, because you're putting yourself first and this, that, and the other. And it's like, that's not actually what we're trying to do here, like at all. But we have to, in 1 Corinthians, it says, it's at 6, do you not know that your bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. And so, like, it's a mandate. Honor God with your bodies. And so, and I think that is, and it's honoring him with your life, and honoring him with your choices, and recognizing, like, okay, so what is self-care? And I think that also the second kind of thing that you kind of come up against is like, is it biblical? Is this a selfish practice? Should you even be doing that? And then the second thing I always hear is that it's like these indulgent practices that kind of feed into the first belief, that first myth, is this like the idea that self-care is like a spa day, getting your nails done, whatever. Like it's this like, it's just luxury, as if it's this like, I don't know, indulgent. Not that indulgence that's not necessarily wrong, but that's not the cornerstone of what self-care is. So,
right.
You can have a celebration in the temple every once in a while, but it's not the whole point.
I think another like myth with self-care though is that I can catch myself doing this sometimes where I just check out or I distract myself and I call that taking care of myself. Like,
right.
just going to scroll my social media or check out with this. Well, actually, I don't watch that many shows, but I know a lot of people do.
Yes.
That's another way we can falsely do self-care. But I have to
Mm-hmm.
remind myself, like, is this actually nourishing my soul right now? Like,
Right.
is it actually making me come back to my life refreshed and ready to engage with my mission field, which is mostly my family,
Right.
with presence and joy and love and patience? And if the answer is no, then it's probably not self-care. Like, what
Exactly.
nourishes my soul? But then at the same time, sometimes what nourishes my soul comes through my body. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that makes me think of a passage you and I were talking about just personally recently about Elijah, right? Who he was like burnt out on the
Yes.
mission as a prophet and just lagging,
Mm-hmm.
like struggling. And the Lord is like, you need a nap and some
Yeah.
food and some drink. And here it
Right.
is. And then we can go again. And like the Lord nourished his soul through his body in those ways too. So this is again the false dichotomy between body and spirit, and how that shows up in the way that we think of self-care.
So much. Yes. I love that thought. I mean, like what I'm hearing you say is this, that dichotomy. People do it in healthcare too. Like we
Mm-hmm.
focus so much on either or biblical counseling or whoever, like whoever you're talking about. Some people either just focus on the physical as if that's the only part of the person, or like in Christian, church counseling, whatever, Bible study, like it's like only focus on the prayer. What's your prayer life like? What's your worship like? What's your, and it's like as if
Yep.
one or the other isn't as important. And God, through that Elijah story, is showing like our body's temple needs to be fed and nourished,
Mm-hmm.
and physical needs are important just as much as our, our soul and our spirit, in a way that it's not even about like, they're not separate things, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We're not, any more than God is like Jesus is not God and God's not Jesus. Like that's not true,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like he is one. And
Yep.
if I really see the Trinity as you have Jesus, the man, the body, you have God the Father, the will of, like this is the soul, this is the like, because our soul is our mind, our will, and our emotions. And so like the Father of the Trinity is the mind, the will, and the emotions of this, of our God. And then you have the Spirit, Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the spirit of, and that's what we commune with our God. And so I just see that as this like, and that's debatable. And there's different theologies around whether we're 2-part or 3-part person, but that makes the most sense to me. That
Yeah.
there is this, that we are made in his image, and he is a three in one, but he is not separate, right? Like God is Jesus, is Holy Spirit, is God. And I feel like in our physical time held reality, we look at our bodies and our soul and our spirit as if they're separate things, and they're so intertwined that what you
Yeah.
do affects the other part.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, and it's not even this like, it's not even affect. Of course, it affects because it's one thing. It's one God, and it's one
Yeah.
person, right? Like it's one, and so,
Yeah. Which is what
um,
the incarnation is showing us, right?
right,
Like the incarnation, if nothing else, shows us that like God's cares for the body and for the physical
yeah,
as the spirit, not as a
right.
yeah. It's
So
quite a holy mystery.
right. It's we don't live on
But
bread alone, but we do live on bread, right? Like we do live on. It's
yeah.
it's
And
not
Jesus fed
nullifying,
people like
right? He
literal
fed
bread
people,
as well as
yeah,
spiritual bread,
as
right? Like
spiritual,
yeah.
right? So he
Yeah.
incorporated both, and I think that that's part of that understanding that you, as we call it, worship. That means nourishing your body, like Elijah was nourished in that place of like truly, it feels like a picture of depression to me, like a picture of this like very
Mm-hmm.
down in the depths place that he was in. And the first thing was like snack and a nap, like this is what you need. and, and then that supported, like you were saying, his soul so that he could then move into his calling. And so like
Mm-hmm.
all of those things are interwoven and need to be addressed as if it is of equal effect in our lives.
Yeah. So
So
that probably informs the principles you said that you have to share with us
yes,
about
yes. So I
self-care.
told you
Like,
about these
yeah.
7 principles, and I did not create these. I've got these from, I want to say, I should have grabbed the book before we started this, but that would take planning, and I'm not always great at that. So I think it's The Invitation to Self-Care
Hmm.
is the book. It is a secular book. And so I took these because I felt like there was a lot of truth in them. But I kind of, some of them I reworded a little bit or laid over that the focus of the source of being, Yahweh is our source of healing. So I kind of, I don't know, paraphrased
Brilliant.
them from that place. So the 7 principles of self-care. I wish I could remember the author of that name, author of that book, but we could probably put it in the show notes, I guess, if we wanted to. But it's this invitation to self-care, I want to say, is the name of this book. So these 7 principles are really about keeping in mind the difference. And we started to talk about this earlier, but just this difference between the beneficial self-care that's really bringing forth, like cleaning the temple and keeping it tidy and keeping it well, upheld, right? Versus this like indulgent, luxurious, again, not that indulgent luxurious is bad, but like these two strong opposing things of like the selfishness of, or the like self-care is just a spa day and it's not sustainable, it's just this indulgent like moments in life, versus the like daily practice of beneficial care, which is the first principle. Self-care is a daily lifelong practice. And so whenever you're looking at, these principles are set up to kind of, I guess, judge, like, is this good self-care? Am I providing self-care to myself? And being able to kind of have this filter. So is it a daily lifelong practice, right? Like, are you going to do a spa day every single day, right? Then we're not probably talking about the core of really what self-care is. So it's more of this, with this principle kind of comes a question that you can ask yourself when you're looking at your self-care plans. Do I treat my self-care as a core of my well-being? Like, is this a part of daily lifelong living? If we come back to the temple metaphor, it's like, are we sweeping every day? Are we taking,
Mm-hmm.
like, are you tidying up? Like, are you taking the daily things? And something I always talk about, like towards mamas, especially busy mamas, especially pregnant mamas, you know, are you peeing today? Like, are you peeing normally?
Keep it real
like,
basic.
like, come on.
But
Like, this
yeah.
is a daily lifelong practice, but have you like gone to the bathroom by yourself? Have you showered by yourself if you want to, like, like, whatever, if you want to play with, like, I love taking my baby into the shower with me, but like, if that's a place of self-care for you, of having that alone time, or being able to like just take a breath. Have you breathed? Have you breathed? I mean, I know you're breathing, but have you breathed today? Like, foundational core of your well-being stuff. Have you eaten? Because I have seen some of y'all's food journals, and I'm thinking that a lot of you need to eat more. So,
Yeah.
this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about self-care, is these like core of your well-being. Have you read your Bible today? Have you gotten to a place of worship? Like, have you gone and put your feet in the soil and stared up at the sky and worshiped your God? Like, and whatever that feels like for you, but like, these are the things, like praying and worship and feeding yourself and breathing and defecation, like cleaning your body. These are normal self-care practices. And they are the first ones to go neglected while we're planning our vacation and our spa day and our girls' night out. That largely, it's not even that those are bad things or indulgent. This is the word I was looking for. They're escapism. And
Mm-hmm.
so if that is your only form of self-care and you have none of this other stuff, these like
Yeah.
foundational, then that escapism isn't actually going to fulfill you. It's just like, trying to dump in a whole lot of water into the bucket that has no holes. And so it's just like, okay, fill it up really quickly. Now rush back to our normal life. And it's going to drain out. Right. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
versus the like keeping it full, keeping your tanks full, keeping yourself well, a beautiful temple. So
Mm-hmm.
I could talk about that one all day long, but that is the core of self-care, is that daily lifelong practice. So the second principle, or I guess I could let you talk. What are your thoughts on that? Or do
I
you
got
have
nothing
anything
to
you want
add
to
so
add?
far.
Okay.
I'll let you know if I do.
So the second principle is self-care is a form of self-love that enables you to love others. And so, like the word
Mm-hmm.
talks about making sure we're loving others, right? As you love yourself. And so if you're not loving yourself, can you actually offer love to others, right? Like if you are
Right.
in that place of, you know, neglect, negative, if your balance is in the negative, can you offer anything, right? So it's this question for me is this activity loving? Like, is this, what you're choosing to do in your self-care plan, like, is this loving? And it's a really
Mm-hmm.
simple, easy way to just kind of, is this healthy for me? Am I loving myself? Is this fruitful, right? If love is a fruit of the spirit, I think that'd be another way of saying that. Like, is this fruitful? So the third one is self-care means taking personal responsibility. And I think that's a huge one for both of us. I think that's something that we talk about a lot, right? Especially
Mm-hmm.
in the way we talk about birth and pregnancy and prenatal care and all of those things, is this personal responsibility aspect. And so with this activity that you're looking at, or these choices you're making, am I taking responsibility in my day-to-day life for my present needs? Or am I like really escaping? Or am I ignoring or denying that I have needs? Because I think that's a big
Mm-hmm.
one, that women, dare I say even Christian women, are really good at denying that they have needs. And we
Yep.
kind of label our needs as wants. And that's really not taking personal responsibility for
Mm-hmm.
ourself and our present needs. So,
Yeah.
excuse me. Got a little of a sore throat, so I'm sorry. Coughing into the mic, trying not to. So yeah, the fourth principle is self-care is noticing what matters to you. So does this
Mm-hmm.
action demonstrate what matters to me now, like in this moment? Um, you know, and I guess I can think of some examples here. Uh, we mentioned that we took a season break from a place of self-care, right? Because there was a lot of big things going on, and it wasn't that the podcast didn't matter, but the our what mattered at that time was your postpartum. What mattered at that time for me was being able to be present for the grief that was very tangible in our lives, and
Yeah.
and what mattered was the holidays, was celebrating with our families, and was taking that time with them, that they were on the forefront when we could have some energy to do something. We could have chosen to do the energy into the podcast, or chosen to take that energy and put it what mattered most to us, which was our children and and our husbands and our family, extended family, right? Like, so that was what mattered. And that just simple of like, you know what? This is what matters most right now. And so we
Mm-hmm.
can lay this down. So it's noticing that and kind of stepping back instead of just staying in this place of like, well, this is what we have to do. You're almost stepping into a denial place instead of really going, does this matter? Does this have value here? So that is as the fourth principle, self-care. And then we've got three more. So the fifth principle is self-care requires attention and responsiveness. So with this action, am I tending to my current needs? Am I willing to modify it based on changing circumstances? So it's very similar to, and I guess really my last example fits more into this one. But they're so related, right? So like there's recognizing the changing circumstances, was kind of noticing part of that was the podcast, like this current life is needing some change of circumstances, but because there was the holiday aspect, that was that what matters to you most. So they're very, very related, right? But there's some nuance that's slightly different here. And so the sixth one is self-care must be realistic to be effective. And I think this one is a really big one. Does it pass the reality test? Is it sustainable? Am I truly willing and able to do this? Right. So, I don't know. I think about, just kind of, like, can I, some people are like, I really want to have an hour and a half of alone time every single day, but they are a mom of 6 children and they work at home. And
are you reading my journal?
I totally, traveled a few states away just to sneak into your room and steal your journal. That's what exactly happened. It might also be that I'm living that life. Yes. It might be that's within my journal as well. But it's that, okay, is that realistic? Is this sustainable in this season? And kind of coming into a place of like, okay, what's this season? What matters to me? What's my circumstances? But like, also, is this realistic? What is this goal, this activity that I'm trying to incorporate into my life? While I'm also saying, I want to go work out and I want to make sure that I'm, going to the farmer's market every weekend. And I want to, list 30 things that we're going to incorporate. And it's like, did you get 36 hours in your day? Because, where's your reality?
If it's not realistic and sustainable, it can become a tyrant, which is the opposite of self-care. Exactly. Instead, you're like enslaved on this hamster wheel trying to make sure you do all your self-care. Do all your self-care. Which is like stress. Then it becomes stress.
So that wasn't what the point was, right? Yeah. So it's is it sustainable? And I think that the question I put in there really is something you almost have to slow down and look at, that kind of going back to taking personal responsibility. These, if you'll notice, they kind of build on each other, all of these principles. But like this, are you willing to do it? They're not even, like, are you able time-wise? Are you able with your resources, like financially? Are you able to do this thing you're looking at? Can you maintain it? But are you willing to, right? Like, do you actually, like, does it just sound like this lofty thing, or I should do this, so this is what I'm supposed to do? But like, is your heart and mind and will set up to actually do this thing that you're looking at, right? Like, are you willing to do it? Because if your will is not behind it, and then you're not, like, it's not going to happen. So then finally, the seventh self-care principle is it brings you closer to the fulfillment of God's plan and purpose for your life. So I see how this action really, lays the groundwork for achieving my higher goals of needs and plans and purposes that God has laid before me, right? Like, this is going to set me up towards that path He's laid before me. Does it align with, like, if you have like a life verse or your mission statement, like, does it align with those things? Does it align with your purpose, moving forward? Right. Like, so, um, these things you see as they build on each other and they're very related. And this is when you can go, this thing that I want to incorporate as self-care, that I'm going to label as self-care. Um, is it, does it fit those things, right? Is it
Yeah.
daily? Is it enabling you to love others, love yourself? Are you able to like take responsibility with personal responsibility? Is it meaning that taking that? Are you noticing what matters to you? Does this require attention and responsiveness? Is it realistic? And does it align with the fulfillment of God's plans and purposes for your life? So that is kind of this
Love it.
overall arching place. So,
Yeah, that's a great framework. That's helpful. I was just mentally running through one of my self-care goals for this year through that filter while you were talking a little bit.
yeah.
So, yeah, so like for me this coming year, one huge thing that feels vital to me is to actually spend time with people face to face. I think
Yeah.
that took a real hit for me after, probably for a lot of people, with COVID, right? Um, and just being a busy mom, I just kind of, we're home a lot. And I thought, you know what, this year I need it to be the year of face-to-face time with people. And that it does fit with all those goals. I'm not going to be able to do it every day, but at least weekly, right?
Yeah, but like regular.
Regular. And I'm
Something just
finally
fell off the
willing
wall.
to,
Sorry.
oh, is that what that was?
Yes.
That's weird.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking how for me with that one, I have to push through some hard to get there, because getting out
Mm-hmm.
the door with 6 kids to go see friends or go on a nature walk with friends is not
Right.
the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to push through the hard because the benefit to my soul
Yeah.
is big enough, right? So,
Yeah. That's
yeah, and
beautiful.
we're made for community. So that, does
Yeah.
that align with my purposes? Yes, it does. Like, anyway, so that's really helpful little set of principles. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing those. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I thought I would share a little quick little phrase that somebody, one of my spiritual fathers, shared with me and my husband at some point too. Um, that's a little bit of a different angle on this, but
So
I
before you
have
go
found it
there,
helpful.
I
Yeah.
have to say that I know what you're, obviously I know what you're about to say because you shared this with me, um, probably 5 years ago, something, and it
Oh,
revolutionized.
really?
Yeah, in the Voxer group, in our original
Oh, I
Voxer group,
did. That's
you
right.
shared this, and
Yeah.
it has made such a difference. So, like, what
Oh,
you guys are
good.
going to get right now is such a valuable gold treasure. So, like,
Hmm.
perk your ears up, pay attention.
I
Okay, go ahead.
so I wanted to share it, and I was gonna like give credit to this like spiritual dad in our lives in the 24/7 prayer movement, but then I googled the phrase that he told me, and it looks like it might be an adaptation from something Rick Warren apparently said,
Oh,
but I
okay.
didn't know that until just recently. So anyway, Joe Steinke is the person I heard it from. Rick Warren might have been the originator. Okay. Um, so the principle is that to build, and this is more of a proactive way to avoid burnout. It's kind of like if you build this in proactively, you're probably going to be able to maintain some degree of wellness, and balance. So daily diversions, meaning that every day you take a little bit of time, and it could be as little as 30 minutes, to do something that is just relaxing and not related to work. It's just a little diversion of feel goodness. And then weekly Sabbaths. And we could probably do an entire podcast on Sabbath. I feel
Yes, we
strongly
could.
about this one.
We should do that.
Maybe we should. I have a friend writing a book about it right now too.
Ooh.
So weekly Sabbath, meaning a day where you cease to work. I'll keep it very simple for now in case we do an episode about it later. But a weekly Sabbath, very biblical. And then a quarterly retreat, meaning that once per quarter, you aim to get away, preferably for an overnight or at least a whole day, kind of out of your normal daily life context to just kind of go a little deeper, unplug, and disconnect from responsibilities and the internet preferably, and retreat. And then a annual vacate, meaning once a year, you just like lift out, go elsewhere in every sense of the word. And this was first spoken to me during a time when we were living in a really hard neighborhood and taking in homeless, addicted individuals to live with us for periods of time while they recovered and got sober. And that's when I first heard this like set of rules. And I thought, oh, it feels impossible, but I also felt like absolutely necessary. Like to not do that, like you can't keep up that kind of high intensity ministry without these kinds of practices built in, or like
It's true.
And the best thing you can do if you can, and I have to admit I haven't been great at this in recent years, but is to get out a calendar and actually like put these things on the calendar, especially those retreats and the vacate. Like, when are you going to do each of these things?
Right.
Plan it out in advance or it will not happen.
Right. Take that responsibility and actually, and put it in the plan.
Yeah.
And set your mind and your will to doing it, and being that intentionality. And it is something that really has the potential to really shift and, like your life, honestly, like to be able to just really, especially if you go back to what I said at the beginning, that like, if your self-care is this place of being a worship, like you're having daily moments where you're really spending time with the Lord, and you're having weekly Sabbaths that you're really spending time with the Lord, and you're having seasonal retreats, and you're having yearly vacates, right? Like I am going to set up a date with you, right? Like I'm going to care for myself in a way that is making it a pleasing temple for you to be in. And that if he is the sort, like the whole point is that we are walking around like healed and whole individuals, then he's the source for all those self-care practices. He's what you're seeking is going away on like Jesus did, right? He often would slip away to the wilderness and pray. And like, that's what I see when I think about those yearly and seasonal, times of like, I'm going to slip away, but also doing that weekly, also doing that in the moment, the daily, moments of like, are you slipping away like Jesus did to refill so that you can, be a whole individual.
To remember your source, to remember who's God and that it's not you.
Right.
To cease striving long enough to remember that you're being carried and that everything is grace and the world will still keep turning even if you rest.
Right.
And that's the stuff that re-anchors us, reroutes us, and allows us to keep engaging in our callings.
Yes. I see
from
it
a healthy place.
Absolutely. It's this place of like, he asks us, and then scripture in Matthew taught, like, are you weary? Are you, this is my paraphrase right here, but like, are you weary? Are you carrying heavy burden? Then come to me, right? Like, and he says that he's going to refresh your life. He's going to be your refuge, your oasis, your place to rest. If we join our life with him. And so it is that laying down our burdens and letting him be the place that we run to, that is self-care. That is addressing, your baseline needs, your physiological needs. I was joking about ingest, but like not ingest, right? Like food, water, warmth. Like, are you cleaning your body? Like, are you having moments of physiological needs that you're really needing? And then I often think about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid when I think of self-care, of like, can you climb that pyramid and really be able to meet the physiological needs, the safety needs, the belonging, love needs, relationship needs, whatever you want to call that tier, and then the self-esteem needs, and then what is it, self-actualization, this like fulfillment of life purposes. And so there's like, if you look at it, it's like the basic needs at the bottom, the physiological needs, and then like ultimate fulfillment of purpose, at the
Mm-hmm.
top. And you can't get, in general, his theory, and I could actually argue with some of it, but like you can't get to the top if you were, safety needs aren't met. Like you can't get
Yeah.
to meeting um feeling accomplishment and self-esteem and having really strong relationships if like you're not stable, you're not safe, you're not secure, you're like hungry and those are real stair steps there. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
good thing to like think about um as you
Yeah.
kind of hold those and the principles and like what you have offered. I always kind of say like create an actual document, like create a self-care plan, write it in your planner, write it as a living Google Doc, like whatever you want to do, but like write it down. put
Mm-hmm. That's
it
good.
put it out there outside of your own mind, because Lord knows that we have enough mental weight going on. Like put it out there, write it down, share it with your spouse. Share, make it part of something that you're giving your children, right? That they grow up to be healthy individuals because they see how to put their burdens on the Lord instead of trying to carry them all themselves. So that's that kind of like maintenance plan. Like what are your regular everyday things, that you're going to do. Um, and then you can look to those when you are feeling run down, when you're feeling stressed out, when life is kind of spiraling. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
am I even okay? Let me see, let me check in, right? Like, let's
Yeah.
see, am I doing those things? And then, really is helpful, uh, to have, just to have that as a place of even when life goes really, um, awry and there's some traumas or tragedies happening, having like an emergency self-care plan is something that I
Yeah.
lean
I
in
was thinking
on
about
as
that.
well.
Yeah. Which transitions nicely to some of the specific considerations for birth workers when it comes to
Yes.
self care. I was definitely thinking of your document that you shared with me a while back of
Yeah.
kind of like your almost like your cheat sheet graphic that
Yes.
you made, I think, of like
Mhm.
after a very hard or challenging birth or in a season where I'm feeling really close to burnout, these are the things I know I can go back to and they're going to kind of help me get back
Right.
um, to where I
Yeah.
need to be. So, do you want to
Yeah.
share any more about that
Sure. Absolutely.
to whatever
So,
extent you're comfortable?
oh yeah. So I have a, I call it the emergency self-care plan, and it's something that as a birth worker, as a midwife, I created this document. It was something that I was taught to do in the Indie Birth Midwifery School. In one of my courses there, we were given this idea, and it's been so valuable to me because it was just when you are at that place of you've just attended a bad outcome, or you've just walked a woman through loss. You've just, really been traumatized by something, right? Like, and you're carrying that trauma. What are you going to do? Because the truth of the matter is, your brain goes foggy, right? Like, you're
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, we've lived through that. I've made it home. There's no chaos. I know for me, personally, like, I don't panic in emergency situations. I am very much like, I'm not worried about my own, like that can all be paused in a way that I'm like, I can just care for the thing in front of me, this situation, this person, whatever's happening. And then afterwards is when all the emotions flood me and all of the like panic or the tears or the screams or the whatever needed to like come out that
Yeah.
got paused, so that I can deal with the emergency situation, right? Because like dealing with a shoulder dystocia and your midwife's screaming, crying is not going to help, right? So like
Right.
it's that we have to, it's this compartmentalizing a little bit,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
um, and so all that comes flooding in, and so then you're like almost reliving, and you're carrying that trauma, and so I don't know what to do right now. I don't know. You're spiraling, you're lost, you're just kind of like, what's your default? And a lot of times those defaults are not actually beneficial. They're not helpful. They're not going to bring about healing or help you release that. And so I have
Yeah.
this emergency self-care plan that's like, okay, when I can't remember what I should do, I can just read the list. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like something very simple things like, okay, first I'm going to pray and I'm going to put on worship music, which is like, again, if your mind is spiraling and if that's not already something you do, sometimes it's like, I don't even know what do I, oh, right, pray. That's a good idea. I should pray, and it's just that first things first, really just basic stuff that's on this list. And it's like, you're going to put on a worship song and you're going to call your husband or your best friend or your mom, like you call somebody and verbally process, because that's what I
Mm-hmm.
always need. I need to verbally process it. And then it's take a shower, braid your hair, make some bread. Like this is my list,
Yep.
very like, because it's cathartic to me to make bread. So if
Mm-hmm.
I go in there and I go and make a sourdough loaf, I'm going to let my hands be busy and I can just, put my prayers and my weeping and whatever I need to do in this very slow task, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I just have this list. And so every list is going to look a little different for everybody, right?
Of
Like, what are
course.
you need?
Yeah.
Something else is like find a natural body of water is my last thing that's on the list, because that is where my worship really, like, I just sink into who I am and who I was created to be in a place of like natural water, whether it be a creek in a forest or a lake or an ocean or a river. Like it just like, okay, I'll just take this puddle. Like, I don't care. Like, I just need, like go stand in the rain. This natural source of water is something that really is cleansing to my
Mm-hmm.
soul. And I know that. And so putting that on there helps me to remember, oh, I need to go and find a spring and put my feet in it and
Yeah.
just be, because that's what I can't even remember that I need right now. So it's what's
Yeah.
on the list.
So smart. It's so smart. And I guess I find probably even those of us who aren't birth workers could benefit from having a list like that. Like,
Yes.
I said
Right.
a really bad day parenting.
Yep.
Where's my list?
Where's my list?
Yeah. Where's,
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many
Major
reasons to
grief
have
that
that.
happens, right? Like during a
Mm-hmm.
loss, during, loss of a job, bad stress day,
Yeah.
your dog passes, like whatever is happening,
Yeah.
have that, emergency self-care plan. And when you have kind of the base one, the self-care document, you can really look at those and be like, okay, these are the things I'm going to do daily. These are the things I'm going to do weekly. These are the things I'm going to do, monthly, seasonally, yearly. These are the routines that I want to incorporate in my life. And then you can pull those from that and be like, okay,
Yeah.
in this like really hard season of like where things have to be dialed back. Maybe there's a major loss. Maybe there's a real heavy relationship strain. Maybe there is, or something beautiful, even like postpartum. You just had a new baby, and or whatever is happening there, and it's like there's a season shift, and I need to shift down. You can then look at that self care plan that's written and be like, okay, what needs to come off of here in this season? What, and kind of go back to those principles, right? Like what's sustainable now? What needs to shift in this season that's not
Mm-hmm.
sustainable? I'm not going to do these things daily because I'm in postpartum, like,
Yeah.
so I'm not going
Self-care
to do
is
that anymore.
absolutely seasonal,
Right.
as with everything.
Yeah.
You have to pause and reevaluate for each season sometimes.
Yeah.
But
So that's another
yeah,
reason
I love
why
the idea of,
having
I
it
think the
written down.
emergency list is kind of like the ones that are like, it's a short list, but it's like your heavy hitters. Like,
Yes.
these are the ones
Mhm.
that are going to do the most, the quickest,
Right.
with like the
Yeah.
least
That's
amount of
like,
effort, right?
this is going to help me like in the, and they need to be small, achievable, like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make myself a cup of tea and I'm going to call my mama. Okay. Like I'm
Yeah.
going to get in the shower. I am going to make bread, like whatever. And it needs to be something that like, that's obtainable in that moment, at 2
Yeah.
a.m. when you just walked in from a really bad birth and life is spiraling and it's like, what can I do? I don't even know. Oh, I can put on a worship song and I can get in the shower and I can just cry.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
need. That's what it's this place of give yourself permission to do the really simple, easy things that really do fulfill and like reset and let go. Um, so yeah, that's
And I would say make sure your friends and or colleagues know that you have this document as well, because sometimes you might even forget you have it when you need it. Which I
yeah,
had to remind you, didn't I?
you
I
did.
was like, did
I
you
was
get
gonna
out your
say,
self-care? Cheat
yeah.
sheet, Lauren?
And yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is
That's how
absolutely
foggy our
right.
brains can get when we're in the thick of it. Like, we
Yes.
need
It's
each
something
other
I
to remind
teach
each
people to
other.
do. And
Yeah.
it's something I have had for years and I've pulled it out before, but I did just attend a stillbirth in December and
Mm-hmm.
that is what it was hard. It was heavy and it was an honor to be there for that family, but there's definitely this. Okay, and so when it was time for me to grieve, I did. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And you asked
Yeah.
me that, and I was like, I'd forgotten it existed. Like I
Mm-hmm.
literally was like, nope, sure haven't. Thank you for reminding me that.
Yeah,
Um, so
for
it shifted
sure.
my day because you asked that. So it is a
Mhm.
good idea to let other people know that that exists.
Yeah. And I just want to add, like, as birth workers, it is okay for us to have secondary trauma
Hmm.
and to have to take care of it. Like,
Yes,
I think it can
it
be
is
sort of,
necessary
I've seen this
to
almost
take care of.
martyr like attitude in certain midwives of like, well, it's not about me. Like, it's their story. It happened to them. Like, I should, and almost like it's selfish to be having their own emotional kind of response to something that they've seen or witnessed or attended. And I just feel like we need to blow that, like, shoot that down, because
Yeah,
it's not okay. Like, in fact, if you don't own it, take responsibility for it and deal with it, it will come out sideways. So
yeah, it will.
this, your self-care, even if it didn't directly happen to you as a birth worker, you're in that thin space that you're connected, and the energy and the oxytocin of everything, like you feel it, it does impact you, and it doesn't do you any good to deny
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Take the time you need, take the effort
Yes.
you need to take
Yes.
care of you, so that you can continue to show up for other women in the future who go through hard
Hmm.
things too,
Yeah.
without your trauma coloring it.
Yep.
So,
It's so true. It's so very true because, and then that goes back to that principle like, is this loving? Like, are you loving yourself so you can love others? Because if you're not dealing with it, you might not be, you're not pouring it onto the family currently, right? Like you're supporting them. Don't dump on them. Don't try and process with them. But you
right.
need to be processing outward somewhere because otherwise you are going to end up dumping that on a future family.
Yep.
And that is the issue that is not loving yourself ends up not allowing you to love others in
Mm-hmm.
that way.
Yep. Yep. So important. I mean, you want to find and this may get into a future episode about how to find a good birth team, but you
Yeah.
want to know that whoever your birth team is, your midwife or birth keeper, what have you, is somebody who understands self-care, and is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they need to be able to come to your birth with a clean slate, so to speak.
Right. That they're not
And
bringing in that baggage.
yeah, like back to that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, if a midwife is making her self-actualized calling and identity as midwife, which is kind of the top of the pyramid, like her main thing at the expense of the things at the bottom of the pyramid, she's not probably going to be the healthiest
Right.
midwife.
Yeah, for sure. And that trauma will show up. It will show up and color their decisions. It will color, um, yeah. And so whether you are the pregnant mama or whether you are a birth worker of any type here, like definitely hear that self-care is important, that you are dealing with, or that your midwife, birth keeper, doula, etc., is dealing with their trauma so that future births, like we bring all of our experiences forward, but there's a difference between like learning from something and applying that wisdom versus being in a new birth situation and still being in this old situation. And so if you
Mm-hmm.
not have a self-care plan, if you're not actively dealing with secondary traumas, then you are going to be in a moment where something triggers you and you're no longer in that moment. You're no longer serving the woman in front of me. You're serving the past mom that you were serving, the past birth situation that looked very similar. And now all of a sudden you're making decisions from a place of trauma or regret or denial or, fill in the blank, right? You're making
Mm-hmm.
decisions for that past situation instead of the one that's in front of you. And that gets
Yeah.
very dangerous.
Yeah.
It can be very dangerous. So,
Yeah.
amongst unhealthy. So
Yeah.
it's important.
It's a serious part of our calling to take care of ourselves in those
Mm-hmm.
ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was even thinking like how I still have a little bit of work to do, I think, on processing, integrating my own birth, my own most recent birth
Yeah.
before I step back into other people's birth spaces, right? Like, so that's something that actually happened to me personally that I still need to kind of like integrate and process, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That was just kind of dawning on my radar recently. Like, oh yeah, there's still a couple little things there that I think I need to spend a little time with so that I can serve others well. And that's okay, and that's human.
Yeah. It's so good. That's so good.
Yeah.
Uh, well, let's see. Is there anything else? I guess when you think of self-care specifically for the birth worker or the pregnant woman, what comes up for you in some like really tangible ways? Is there anything we haven't hit?
One thing that's coming up for birth workers is something that we've talked about, but I don't think on this podcast, but it's kind of self-care practice of that I find really important is the kind of prayer before entering a birth
Yes.
space.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of Christian birth workers I know, including you, have kind of some sort of personal liturgy almost that they kind of like tend to engage before crossing the threshold of a door into a home
Yes.
birth. And I think it can be as different as the person is, like each person's is different, but I definitely see that as a form of self-care in birth work, of just kind of centering and dedicating myself and inviting the Holy Spirit to move and work through me and all of that. It puts me in the best possible space that I can be in to move into that birthing room.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely something that is a very powerful practice. I think that makes that it absolutely makes a difference, right? Prayer changes things. Prayer makes a difference in our lives, and so yeah, absolutely having a time of, you get that call, it's time to go, and there's especially if you're a new birth worker, I think there's a tendency or temptation to like get in a rush and be like, okay, I gotta go. It's time to go. Like, sorry, kids, I gotta go. I love you. Kiss you. Bye. Grab the bag. Do I have everything? Da-da-da. And you just get in this like heightened rush, especially if, like I said, you're new or you're maybe not super busy. It's not like part of your regular like daily life that you're going off to birth. Is that just like freshness of excitement and like she's giving birth, yay, a new baby is coming into, and you can just get really heightened, right? And I think that having that place of, okay, allow yourself to be excited, allow yourself to do whatever, make sure that you have what you need and you get there in time, but like get in the car and like, okay, I am now going to take a moment. I think of Karen Strange, there's always a moment. There's always enough time to take a breath, right? There's always enough time to just pause. And so I get in the car, and once I'm in the car, I take a nice deep breath, and and I'll put on a worship music that's nice and slow. And I normally do like my VU breath, that is just that mid-tone sound to reset my nervous system. And then I just pray like that I'm coming into this place with clean hands and a pure heart, and leaving all of my personal baggage and my, whatever the stresses of my day or current life situations are left, not taken into her home, not taken into
Mm-hmm.
this space, and that I would have my eyes open and my ears to the Lord. And that I would be able to be, present for her. And so, like, very much pray those things every time. And
Mm-hmm.
that sets the focus and the lens, right? To just, okay, this is the focus right now, and it's not on me. Um, it's time to like get into birth mode, right? Of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sacred role of witnessing. So
Mm-hmm.
totally a point of, seeing self-care as that regulating your nervous system as
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
of caring for yourself.
Yes. Yes. And this kind of bigger picture, but not saying yes to everyone.
Mm, yeah,
Maybe part of self-care as a birth worker too. Like,
absolutely.
you aren't the birth worker for everyone, and not every woman is a client for you, which we're going to do an episode on this too in more depth. But
Yeah,
getting to a place where you're like, I can say, no, this one isn't the best fit for whatever reason.
right,
That is okay for me to do that. And by doing that, I'm not abandoning her to being without help. Like, there will be
right.
somebody else who will step into that space for her, because taking on clients who aren't aligned is draining and
Yeah,
sometimes even damaging, not just for you, but for often her too, because you're not really the best fit for her. So,
right, exactly. It's absolutely
I,
damaging to both
yeah,
parties.
yeah. So that's a big picture self-care item too, I would say.
Yeah. And it makes me think, just like, it's basically, that's one good boundary, right? But like, boundaries are part of good
Yeah.
self-care, right? Is what I guess I hear from that point you're making there, is like, do you have good boundaries?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because if you're either saying yes to too many people, and so you never have space for yourself and your family, or you are saying yes to the wrong kinds of people, all of this will wear you down. It will wear you down.
Absolutely. I think I want to say it was Danny Silk that I heard say this, just kind of pointing out that, like, when you're saying yes to somebody, you're saying no to someone else. And so, whether it's another mom that God has for you to serve, whether it's your family or your husband that you're saying no to. And it's easier if you're a yes person, if you're, a people pleaser, you're a yes man, and like, you just want to take and love everyone that comes your way.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Like, I please have a servant heart. And do not hear us wrong. Like, please have a servant heart, but serve who you're called to serve. And if you can think about, who am I saying no to when I say yes here? Whether that's a client or any other activity you're choosing to do.
Mm-hmm.
When I say yes, who am I saying no to? That helps kind of think out and filter out, like, oh, I don't actually want to say no to my 10-year-old right now, but by saying yes to, this acquaintance that's asking me of this thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
saying yes to you means I'm saying no to my 10-year-old, that
Mm-hmm.
asked me to do this with them, like, and is that what I actually want to do right now? And, does that carry the weight, to make that adjustment? Sometimes it does, right? Maybe it's like, is the Lord asking me to do this thing? Like, am I saying yes to the Lord by saying yes to this situation, this person, this circumstance? Um, and I think that helps the, recovering people pleasers out there.
Yeah, that's good. Mm.
All right. So I'm thinking about, just like what all we wanted to talk about in this episode and some real tangible. I think we've given a lot of just really applicable things that you can do, practical things. I feel like the only thing, it's almost a little bit of a transition, kind of a jump, but something that's really important, even I would say as much as boundaries, right, is self-talk.
Oh,
Is kind
yes.
of another leg of self-care, right? So I kind of like, as I
Mm-hmm.
was saying, it was like I see the self-care, it's like this branch. There's branches of like the physiological, and there's branches of like boundaries and and relationships and all of that. But like your self-talk is a huge branch
It's so huge.
of this self-care. So like
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm always telling people like, your feelings are important. They're valid. Like feel them, like drop into them, drop into your body. But don't believe their lies because the enemy wants to use those as doorways in, which is why the Lord says in his word to like in your anger don't sin, right? So like the
Yeah.
feeling of anger is not a sin. It's what we do with it, right? And so in the same manner, what are you feeling? Use that as your self warnings, as your alarm system of like something's not like something's right or something's not right. Use that as that compass, but don't believe the lies that if they are sneaking in and trying to create temptation, create lies about yourself or who you are or your worth, or fill in whatever blank here. And I think it that ties into self-talk, because when you are experiencing something that creates doubt in your life, or I can think about imposter syndrome, right? Like that's a big one for birth workers,
Mm-hmm.
especially those of us in the traditional side or the birth keeper, and we don't have this like existential like entity telling us that we have earned the right to call ourselves
Right.
a midwife. There's this like, okay, I'm an imposter. I've got this self doubt happening. This like, am I really like, am I worthy to do this? Like, have I lost my? I must be crazy, And it's like all of a sudden, this feeling, like, okay, recognize that you're feeling this way. What is that telling you? And then if you start telling yourself all these lies of like, did God really say? Then you're stepping into believing lies. Then you're giving doorway for the enemy. Because the truth is, if you are called to birth work, like you are called. I firmly believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm talking to a lot of Christian birth workers on this podcast. So it's like, this is a calling to be in this sacred work. And so did God call you here? And if he did, if you can say, yes, this is what he's called me to do, then I would say, then don't call yourself an imposter. Like, then,
Mm-hmm.
like that's the lie. That's what the enemy wants to convince you of. And so just a little side tidbit, somebody told me recently, imposters don't get imposter syndrome. So there's a little nugget there for you, like it's this in the same line, like bad moms don't wonder if they're bad moms.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're wondering if you're a bad mom, that means that you're invested enough to care, and you're a good mom. Like, because bad moms
Yeah.
don't care if they're a bad mom. Imposter syndromes, or imposters don't wonder if they are an imposter. They know they're an imposter.
Mm-hmm.
Like they know that they shouldn't be doing what they should be what they're
Interesting.
doing.
Yeah.
So
It's an
there's
interesting
some
point.
side nugget for you. Freedom. When I heard that, I was like, freedom.
Man, the self-talk thing is sometimes the difference between, like, how you're talking to yourself is a difference between whether or not you experience your life as stressful and difficult and horrible or not, too. So
Mm-hmm.
this has been huge for me. I've had a couple of people tell me in my life, one was a naturopath and one was a therapist, one of them said, your mind is like an unruly puppy, Brooke. It's like, oh man, it is true. If I sometimes externalize the thoughts I'm thinking towards myself to a friend or just out loud in the privacy of my own home, I'm like, that's terrible. That is terrible. I would never say that to anyone else.
Right.
And look what I'm speaking over myself, like in my mind. So it's like this puppy that it's just out of control and needs to be trained. And as I've been working on training that puppy, I'm noticing my resilience is increasing significantly. I can handle more that might get thrown at me circumstantially because inside I'm talking to myself differently. That sounds sort of strange, but does that make sense? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Because if circumstances are coming at you and you're then also telling yourself these stories about what that means, about who you are, your worth, the fate of your future, etc., that circumstance suddenly becomes about 10 times heavier and bigger, and you crumble under it.
Yep.
But when you can talk to yourself about the circumstance and what it means about who you are and where you're headed and what your life is about, whatever, in a positive way, infiltrated with truth and what God says is true about you and your circumstances in your life, that circumstance suddenly it's not that unbearable anymore. So
yes.
If you're struggling with self-care, like pay attention to how you're talking to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe first, and like, is it seasoned with the truth of the gospel and with all that is good and pure and lovely and holy and admirable and all those things that scripture tells you should think about. And are you speaking to yourself like you would speak to a friend that you love or not? And shifts in that, like the work you put into training your self-talk, I think has like infinite benefits for how okay you feel in this world.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
How you are.
Yes.
And yeah. So that's true for birth workers and mothers and all people.
All people. It actually reminds me of an activity I did. I want to say it was in midwifery school. That was on the whole like taking care of yourself and your self-taught, like in as a birth worker. But it was exactly what you're talking about, is like recognize this like story you're telling yourself. And we wrote down like where we felt vulnerable or insecure or just plain bad, right? Like just thinking about those things, and we wrote it down, and then it just allowed it to be on the paper, right? Like get it out of here in this headspace and like put it out there, because then all of a sudden it becomes very real and like in your face, and you're like, oh, I did not realize that I felt that way about myself, that I was thinking these things. And then you can look at it and then write the new story. And, going through, I know as I wrote my new story, it was this, wow, that's not the truth of the Lord. That's not the truth of the Lord. Like this is not biblical. This is not truth at all. This is where I'm lying to myself. Right. And then being able to write the new story of what's the word of God say about me? What is the truth? And it was a very tangible, on paper way to take control of the words you were speaking over yourself. This like old story compared to the new story.
That's powerful. There is something about externalizing it, whether verbally with a trusted person or on paper, that just externalizing it takes so much of the power out of a lot of the lies. In fact, I think I had a moment like that with you and Heather recently where I said, I'm believing this about God right now in this situation. And you were both like, yeah, that's wrong.
Yeah, that's not
but
true.
But as soon as I said it, I also knew it was wrong.
Right.
Like, even though it felt very real inside of my head.
Yeah.
When it came out of my mouth, I was like, yeah, that's bull.
That's not true. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was very much like a very anti-biblical, like he is not going to take care of me. Whoa, what now? Like it was like, that's not. And once you said it out loud, we didn't even have to I don't remember what you said. That was an example.
It was pretty
But
close to that.
okay. But it was this very obvious, and it was so obvious that when it came out of your mouth and was no longer in your mind, right? It was no longer being able to be in the dark. It's that darkness into light kind of thing. And when you shine the light on it, it's like, oh, I do not believe that. I am no longer coming into alignment with that. I didn't realize I was until I said it, until I wrote it down, until I shared it with a friend, until I shared it with my spouse, and then it's getting it out there is what allows you to question that old story and recognize where it's guiding you and where it's trying to get you to serve things that are not of God, right? And that is able to then just make that shift, because then it's like, well, that's not truth. I'm done believing it. And sometimes it's not quite as simple, right? Like sometimes it's not quite as obvious.
Totally.
But it does give you that cornerstone to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe self-care point number 500 or 26 or whatever is find yourself some friends with whom you can externalize the dark thoughts in your mind and have them called out as untrue.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, well, this is good. I think we've gone all over, as we tend to do.
Always good conversations.
Yeah. And I think our listeners don't mind too much listening to our rambling, meandering conversations. But
yeah.
So hopefully we've given a lot of good tips on the idea of self-care from kind of a different angle than maybe we're fed by mainstream secular culture. I know even I got some food for thought. So let me just pray for us to close it out, and then we will look forward to seeing y'all next week on the podcast. Father, we thank you for the incredible honor of being your temple. If I actually really sit with that thought, that just blows my mind, that you've made us your temple, your dwelling place, and given us like all the dignity and honor and glory that comes with having God dwell inside of us. So let us take seriously that holy charge and responsibility and privilege, and in the way that we take care of ourselves, mind, body, and spirit. And I just pray for our listeners that you would just take a highlighter to anything that was said today that is a here and now word from you for them, of any specific practices that you might be inviting them into to adopt in this season to be temple keepers, and to take care of the bodies that you've given them, as a mother, as a birth worker, as just a human being, and that each one might walk away with a new practice, a new tool in her tool belt to carry her through the season that she's in right now, and worship you through that act. We love you, and we thank you again for the privilege of being able to do this podcast, and we bless each daughter who hears it today. In your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Holy Wild Birth. We hope that you were genuinely encouraged, inspired, and challenged by what you heard today. If you're loving what you hear, please make sure that you share it. Leave reviews. That helps other mamas find this content as well. And don't forget to read the show notes, okay? Because that's where you can find our email address if you want to reach out to us and start a conversation. It's also where you'll find free offerings as well as invitations to work with me and or Lauren. We can't wait to get to know you. See you next week.